How's it going, people? It is Friday, the last day of September. How are you guys doing? I'm doing fucking excellent. So, Vladimir Zelenski, he's definitely earned the title of Bullshit Artist 2022, but he may take the cake as a bullshit artist for the 21st century. And let me expand on that, because in case you didn't know, today at 3 o'clock Moscow time, which was early in the morning, 8 o'clock our time on the east coast of the United States, a great momentous thing happened. The Russian Federation has accepted the entrance of 4 new territories into the Russian Federation. The territories of Zaporozhye, Kherson, Lugansk, and Donetsk. They are now part of Russia. The people voted. They had a referendum. The people spoke, and that's what they wanted. Unlike Kosovo, where we just started bombing Serbia and said, hey, we're going to make that a country and you don't have much to say about it. No. Wait a minute. The Russians actually had a vote. And those people had voted 8 years prior to that to be their own independent regions. But apparently being independent in the face of Ukrainian aggression wasn't an option. So, what does Vladimir Zelenski do to attempt to shit on such a momentous day? Well, very simply, he started throwing out the NATO card. Yes, the NATO card. It's wonderful. It's incredible. It's super fantastic. That he was going to send an accelerated application to join NATO. Oh no, that's what the Russians didn't want. They didn't want Zelensky to join NATO. Well, folks, there seems to be several problems with what Zelenski said. In fact, Zelensky knows better. But Zelensky likes to grandstand, and he's like most people in the Western governments and Western media. He counts on you being dumb as owl shit. And here's what the problem is. Number one, NATO membership is going to hinge on whether NATO decides to let you in. In fact, there was an interesting development today about NATO membership. One of the preconditions that Sweden had to meet before the Turks would not blackball Swedish membership into NATO, the Swedes reneged on that. And now Erdogan, however you want to say his name, has decided that no, Sweden will not be a member of NATO. So there is the NATO card, or the ability of NATO members to blackball people. I don't think Turkey is going to want Ukraine in NATO. But there's even a bigger problem, because Ukraine does not meet the criteria for NATO membership. Particularly, not just one criteria, but 2 criteria. Number one, to become a member of NATO, you cannot actively be engaged in a war. The Ukrainians are actively engaged in a war. They are currently at war with Russia. Interestingly enough, Russia has not been at war with them, although Russia has now moved their special military operation to an anti-terrorist operation, because they have labeled the Ukrainian military a terrorist organization because they like to bomb and kill civilians. They have an 8-year history of it, and now they are killing citizens of the Russian Federation and Russian territory. So they don't meet the standard that a country may not join NATO if they are currently at war. Number 2, you cannot join NATO if you have any disputed territory. So at this point, Zelensky has to make a choice. Does he tell the Russians, all right, take Kherson, Lugansk, Donetsk, and Zaporozhia, and that way I can enter NATO because I don't have any area under conflict. There is no disputes in my territories, which may be fine, super dandy, but the Russians also have a little chunk of this and a little chunk of that in different areas. So as long as there are any Russian troops outside of that area, Zelensky can't even cede those places. And once he cedes them, then there becomes the other problem, because that means that Zelensky can't attack Russia without NATO backup. So in other words, Zelensky gives up those places and the Russians pull back to those borders. And one day Zelensky starts rattling his saber and saying, I want Crimea back. Unless he gets the NATO okay, once he attacks Russian territory, he's on his own. NATO does not have to come to his defense. This is one of the things that's constraining Poland right now. Poland would love nothing more than to retake Lviv, however you want to say it, and some of the far western territories of Ukraine that actually used to be part of Poland. The Poles would love to have that territory back. And one of the things that constrains them from doing the land grab in Ukraine is the fact that they go in and they don't have NATO backing. Then they might just find themselves at war with Russia. And they will definitely find themselves at war with Ukraine. So Zelensky is counting on you folks not to know the requirements to join NATO. He is being a super huge bullshit artist, and he's counting on you to be stupid. You know, and trust me, the media has done their best to make you stupid with ideas that Russia will piss away $40 billion of its own infrastructure to blow up a pipeline they control the tap on. Yes, absolutely. It has to be real because you heard it on CNN, Fox, and every other sorry ass news outlet. Because the only important stuff is the stuff they choose not to tell you. Kind of like Zelensky. He chose not to tell you that, we're sending, he only told you half the story. We're sending an expedited application to join NATO. He didn't tell you the other half, even though Ukraine doesn't have the ability to join because we've not met the criteria to join. See how that's kind of important? But no, Zelensky, the bullshit artist, he goes out there and he'll tell you half and hoping that you'll never hear the other half. And it's interesting how he talks about the people of Donetsk and Lugansk like they're loyal Ukrainians. They're not. This is one of the most interesting things to me. And it just goes to show where the Ukrainians' head are. The Ukrainians have done everything they can to get the ethnic Russians who grew up, and were born in those areas of Ukraine to leave, including killing them, shelling them, all that happy shit. Now, you want them gone. You want them gone. You want Ukraine free of ethnic Russians. And now they want to leave. But you don't want to let them go. Why don't you want to let them go? No, it's real simple. You want the land they live on, because the land in Donetsk region, the Donbass is rich in mineral deposits. The Donbass is a great source of coal. Yes, coal, the countries that don't have their head up their ass still use coal to heat, unlike Germany and their woke leftist environmentalist bullshit. Also, you look at other places like, let's say, Mariupol. Mariupol was an industrial hub with the Azov steel works, right? They made a lot of steel. How do they make a lot of steel? Well, they happen to be very, very close to a region with a lot of minerals and coal to help make their steel. Now, the Ukrainians want all the goodies from the land. They just don't want that pesky Russian ethnicity in the region to screw things up. No, they would much sooner have those folks gone because, well, they're Ukrainians and they're better than the Russians, and they know they're better than the Russians even though they're not. And they're kind of xenophobic and they want that land. Now, where have I heard that before? It seems there was this little Austrian dude with a little mustache who wanted a bunch of land east of him. He wanted the land, but he didn't want those pesky Slavs who resided there. And he definitely didn't want the folks that were living in those areas who were Slavic and Jewish. Didn't want those folks either. Now, it seemed we had a little problem with that sort of attitude. It seemed that we used to grow up understanding that that's a no-go. You can't do that. It's not okay to commit genocide because you want somebody else's land. That used to be how we were brought up. Apparently, we don't have that issue anymore. And we will support the genocide, the removal of a population, so you can have territory. An ethnic minority that is actually indigenous to a region, and you want to get rid of it. I swear I've read this before. I swear I've seen this before, and I thought that was the sort of thing we as Americans didn't support. It's only taken us 80 years from denouncing genocide to supporting genocide. And yep, we'll do it, babe. Absolutely. We love us some Ukrainians, man. With them Ukrainians are holy and democratic. That was another thing. You got to listen to Zelenski's speech. He went on and on about how Ukraine was free and democratic. Free and democratic. Okay, compared to what? Compared to what? Compared to North Korea, maybe. Compared to everywhere else in Europe, no. I want somebody to give me, and you can hit me up in the comments, one country in Europe that is less democratic than Ukraine. One country. One country. How about one country that's more corrupt in Europe than Ukraine? How about that? Because we're not only supporting a genocidal government that is basically the new apartheid, because they're going to keep that ethnic minority down and underneath and knuckled under and not let them have a say, much like apartheid did. Yeah, it seemed to me we didn't like those fellas. Anybody remember that? Don't seem we like those guys. Oh man, and here we are, the movie of the week. The War Against Apartheid, starring Vladimir Putin in the part of Nelson Mandela. Boy, I know I just triggered a bunch of you folks with that one. But it's true. It's true. We downed the apartheid government of South Africa because they shit on people. They wanted to keep control over people, much like the Ukrainian government wants to force control over their ethnic minorities. And it's just not ethnic Russians, by the way. The ethnic Tatars don't get their fair share of the problem, although a lot of the Tatars reside in Crimea, the Crimean Tatars. And a lot of their woes and agony stopped when Russia absorbed Crimea into the Russian Federation. As far as Tatars go, yeah, there are a minority of Tatars all over Russia. In fact, next village down from my in-laws, heading towards their regional seat of government for their region, not their oblast, but their region. The next town down is a Tartar village, and they are Muslims. They are not Orthodox. They're not Christians, as the majority of Ukrainians are, as the majority of Russians are. They're not Orthodox Christians. They are Muslims. And they live right down the road. They have their own village. They want to associate with their own kind. Nobody's forcing them to live in those villages. I've seen Tartars from the next village down in my in-laws' village, at the shops and everything. It's not a big deal. But in Ukraine, those people are persecuted because, well, they don't look the same. They don't have the same sort of religion. Although it's interesting because just like the Nazis, the Ukrainians seem to have a big problem with religion. In fact, there's been a lot of attacks on churches. By the way, any of you conservative folks that happen to be very, very religious, I might want to have a little look at what the Ukrainian extremists are doing in churches all across Ukraine. It's just not isolated. It's just not one or two. There's a bunch of incidences where these people are going in, they're kidnapping priests, and they're desecrating churches. Now, I'm not the kind of guy who's got to go to church every Sunday. In fact, I'm the kind of guy that probably walks into a church and wonders if I'm going to spontaneously combust into flames. But that being said, if you're a person of faith, you have a right to worship in a way you see fit. You have a right to engage in those activities. What you don't have a right is to go in and subvert somebody else from following their beliefs. And that's the great democracy. That's the great free and democratic Ukraine. That's how it exists today. And I'm not lying. I'm not telling you bullshit. The information's out there. You can find it very easily if you want to look. If you want to remain ignorant, then just continue to watch what the news is telling you and take it verbatim. Take it verbatim. But you say, well, it doesn't affect me. I'm not Christian. Okay. You're not Christian. It doesn't affect you. But maybe you're Jewish, maybe you're Muslim. Well, whatever they're doing to the Christians, they can turn around and do to you. I'm not religious at all. Okay, you're not religious at all. Yes, and I believe in X. Okay, you believe in X, whatever X may be. Do you believe that X is more protected than religion? If they can do it to one group, they can do it to anyone. And I think this is the one thing where everybody overlooks. If the Ukrainian government wants to wipe out ethnic Russians today, Tartars tomorrow, maybe they want to decide that if you're redhead, you're genetically inferior. And I will say this much, it's also interesting that much like the folks who ran the German government in the 30s and early 40s, while there may be a problem with Christianity, they certainly don't seem to have a problem with Muslims. And I'm not against Muslims at all. But it's interesting that while you have folks who are on the extremist elements of the Ukrainian government and all their little factions, going into Orthodox churches and causing all sorts of trouble, you have a group of Muslims who are former ISIS members who are fighting for Ukraine. Yep, the majority of them are Chechen. They're not the Chechens that you find in Grozny or Chechnya. They can't go back there because if they do, they will be arrested, jailed, and or shot. And not by the government, by their own Chechen buddies, because they were ISIS. You know, the moderate Muslim head choppers in Syria. Speaking of Syria, real quick, just want to remind you, Syria has territorial integrity. Yep, they're a sovereign country, the sovereignty of Syria. And just remember, folks, we keep having it drilled in that you can't simply send your troops into a sovereign country because you feel like it. That's not how we do business. Unless you're our great NATO ally, Turkey, or you happen to be the United States of America, because we have troops on the ground in there. But hey, it's okay when we do it. It's okay when we do it. We have a reason to do it because they're on our border and they have our security interests. Oh, wait a minute, they're not on our border. Well, they're definitely our security interests. In what way? I'm a little fuzzy on it, but it's got to be true. The news told me. The news told me it has to be true. We have a vested interest in being in Syria, although nobody can seem to ever tell you what it is. You know, folks, regime change. You don't like somebody else's government, so you want to change it. You want to get rid of it. How long are we going to keep playing world police? How long are we going to keep pissing away tax dollars and our youth? And conservative folks, I've got such a soft spot in my heart for you. I was one of you for a long time. And we believe in a strong military. We believe in this. We believe in that. We believe in the goodness of America. We believed in all this good stuff. And we're sending our children off to die for these causes that have nothing to do with a great United States. We're sending our children off to die because Democrats like Joe Biden and Barack Obama want a regime change in Syria. And they sold us a bill of goods. They sold us a war that was none of our damn business. And we're doing it again. We're doing it with Ukraine. Joe Biden benefits more from Ukraine. His son had the no-show job. The big guy always gets his cut. And they've convinced a lot of conservative warrior class folks, people who served in the military like I did, people who love their country, they've been able to trick those folks into thinking that somehow going to war in Ukraine is what America needs. It's not what America needs. America needs to take care of its own borders. You want to defend this country? Not a problem, dude. Take all that tactical gear, go set your ass down on the border. Set your ass down on the border. Do what you're doing in Ukraine, but do it on our border. Citizens arrest in Texas. Arrest and apprehend the illegals, or let them know they're not welcome on this side of the border and see if you can coax them back to the other side of the border. Wouldn't that make a lot more better sense for what's great for America? What's needed for America? Or you're simply being replaced. They're sending you, because they've talked you into going to Ukraine, to defend the cross-dresser Zelenski and his group of sycophants and sick people. They've convinced you to go over there and fight and possibly get killed, all in the idea of a great and free Ukrainia. And you're going to be replaced. You're going to be replaced by folks who've come across that border illegally. And they're going to take your job. They're going to outpopulate you in your communities. And it's going to be interesting when we finally get a tipping point to where people aren't going to be really happy with those folks. But no, hey, definitely. The territorial integrity of the Ukrainian borders are much more important to a conservative than the borders of our own country. How? I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure how you folks want to be played like that. I'm just not sure by a lot of it. But I really wish that conservatives, liberals, everyone else would wake up and understand that what we are doing to Europe is criminal. What we are doing to Ukraine is criminal. And we're so full of hypocrisy right now that it would take a good 40 years of a populist president to unfuck this country. And I don't think we'll get it because the political parties have too much power here. They have too much sway. And I've even seen it local. You people on the right and the left who think they're a little elite. When somebody comes along who challenges the narrative of one, or maybe even has challenged both, they will unite to destroy that person. They will unite to denounce that person. And let's face it, people who think they're elite and entitled, they're elite and entitled before they're a Democrat or a Republican, before they're a conservative or a liberal. And that's really where we're at. So anyway, folks, y'all have a good weekend. Enjoy everything before the winter frost comes and our European allies freeze, because we helped blow up a fucking pipeline or two. And enjoy everything before, hey, yeah, maybe it will be a warm movie winter. You know, a 10 million degree sunburn will do that. And if we don't straighten our shit up, that's where we're heading. Anyhow, folks, y'all have a good one. Talk to you later.